Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another captivating LP Magazine podcast. Thank you all for joining us. And today I am joined by folks from Zebra who I'm super excited to talk to. We've got Popw and Scott Pethuyne on board here to talk with us about AI. And good Lord, AI is changing so quick. Like it seems like every week something new is coming out. I just saw Google has this machine I saw a picture of it and it scared the crap out of me. I don't know if you guys saw that story, but that's a whole other topic. So we'll just talk about AI as it is today. And we'll kind of dig into some nitty gritty. And you guys are experts at Zebra. So hopefully you can help educate us, educate me a little bit on what's happening. So for the year 2025, we'll start off with a little bit of explanation about who you guys are.
Sure thing. Well, thank you, Stephanie, for having us. My name is Popw. I am the product manager for Actionable Intelligence with Zebra. My background's a little bit diverse from the standpoint that I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. I worked in loss prevention for a little over 10 years. I ended as a senior regional manager of loss prevention. Worked in government, both state and federal, from a law enforcement perspective, but also Department of Defense, and then ultimately ended up at Zebra working on actionable intelligence. So I'm very excited to be working on the application. It is a fantastic application in terms of solving loss prevention problems. So thank you for having us today to speak with you.
Right. Awesome. I love a diverse background like yours. It's awesome. And Scott.
Yeah, thanks, Stephanie. I'm Scott Pethuyne. I work on the solution consulting team at Zebra. So I support our software sales organization as a solution specialist for a couple of our software solutions, one of them being Actionable Intelligence, which is our advanced analytics solution that Caleb manages, and another one being Inventory Visibility, which is our self-scan inventory counting solution. So I do a lot of product demonstrations, a lot of sort of fact finding and things with customers to kind of see, hey, what are you experiencing in your business? What are the challenges or things, gaps you're trying to close? And then how can we use Zebra's different solutions to try to help close those gaps? And so, much like Caleb, I actually also have a background in retail. So I spent 12 years in retail loss prevention, asset protection before I joined Zebra about 4.5 years ago. So had a lot of fun, a lot of good times on the retailer side. Now being on the solution provider side, it's fun to be able to kind of help people solve those challenges as well.
Yeah, I mean, are you guys both pretty excited about AI and what's coming? I'm pretty stoked about it. I can see by your faces, those of you who are just listening, they're nodding. Like there's some really cool stuff coming down the pike. So let's kind of go back to the basics, like I was saying with 2025 and what's coming. But for starters, AI is more than ChatGPT, correct?
Absolutely, yes. So if we take it back a little bit, let's say the end of 2023, beginning of 2024, ChatGPT is what made AI real for everybody, right? It was the first thing where, regardless of your experience, regardless of your college degree, regardless of what industry you work in, you could go to your web browser and start interacting with an LLM and start having conversations and getting answers to whatever you could decided to converse with. And so it was that first tool that made it mass market real. Everybody could start interacting. And so what we started to see from in the industry was a significant acceleration of demand for AI solutions, right? The ChatGPT experience was just the catalyst for that acceleration. And so what we started to see is a wide variety of different asks. And at Zebra, right, our portfolio of retail solutions is over 100 different solutions. So as you can imagine, the use cases are very diverse, but very intriguing from a development standpoint. So what we started to see in the retail space, we think of like self-checkout, right? Organizations were starting to say, okay, we have checkout, whether it's manned or unmanned, and we want to start to solve problems closer to when it is actually happening, right? And so the questions became, okay, we need to inject AI more into the checkout process. How do we block bad activity immediately when it starts, right? Yes, it's great that we have people who can do investigations, but what if we could stop the problem immediately when it's starting to materialize? So that was one side of it. The other side of it is how can we empower our frontline worker? right? We obviously have employees who are working the shop floor, employees who are interacting with customers or running the cash register experience. And so really we were at this point where near almost every employee has access to a device, a store provided device. And with that, are we now at a position where the employee no longer needs to be out of the know, right? What I mean by that is if an employee has a question, do they need to wait minutes before they get an answer, right? And so the ask became, okay, how can we accelerate the time to resolution for when Johnny at the register says, I don't know how to do this transaction. Johnny can immediately pick up his Zebra device and call it a manager, video chat with a manager, or even ask the AI assistant to say, hey, am I allowed to do a transaction like this? Can I do a refund that is over 30 days? And the device will tell him the policy for that situation, right? So our associates are now no longer in a position where they can no longer say, I didn't know, but more important, it's the opposite. We're empowering them to accelerate the experience, but always be in the know. And then I would say last, from the data side of things, we're seeing customers say, my business since COVID has exploded in terms of complexity. Customers want to shop with me in more ways than I could have ever imagined. And all of those avenues of transactions, of customer experience, of moving inventory in and out of stores or DCs, all of that is creating data. And so now our customers are saying, I need AI that can scrub and process that data in seconds. I can't wait for it to be once a day, have the results come back tomorrow. I need to be able to run it on demand on any data sets that I want, regardless of how many different complexities are within that data set. So truly baking I guess to summarize the answer, it'd be the customers are asking us to bake in AI into everything in terms of
Mhm.
that retail experience.
Scott, what do you see for
Yeah,
2025?
the piece that I would add is, the Chat GPT being the popularization of AI and making it kind of real for everyone and allowing everybody to interact with it. I think sometimes we've lost sight of the fact that this isn't the beginning of AI. This isn't, it's been around for several different uses and types of things for quite a while. And I think, it's important to also to, some of those examples that Caleb was talking about, like the computer vision piece, or even, from a data and analytics perspective, hey, what if I want to use, instead of saying if this then that, what if I want to let a computer model tell me, across all of this data and all of these statistics, which ones of these cashiers or stores or items looks most interesting? Which one should I spend my time paying attention to? Those are kind of the applied AI or targeted AI types of use cases that I think are really kind of a direct to value approach. If you're a customer, if you're a retailer and you're trying to think, hey, we want to inject AI into the business, and we want it to kind of go from I need AI to generate some kind of value for me. I feel like there's plenty of those options available as well. It's like we don't have to figure out how to tailor an LLM to for me to ask it a question and then for it to search through everything that's ever existed on Google and spit me back something that's useful. It's there's definitely lots of other approaches out there as well that are kind of specific and tailored, and that's one of the nice things about being at Zebra is because we do have this sort of breadth of possible solutions. So there's a lot out there for where we can usually do something that helps somebody out.
As I think about AI and just the possible just use cases, it just almost seems overwhelming. And I'm sure even for a retailer, it's kind of like, wow, where do we begin? And even for Zebra, like how do you guys know what to focus on? Is it okay, let's talk about improving customer experience, or let's talk about internal theft? Do you parse it that way, or are you how do you even stay organized with the overwhelming, breadth of this thing?
Yeah, I can tell you from my perspective, I spend a lot of time with our customers and taking that feedback of, hey, how do we close the gap between, I'm not able to work as efficiently as I'd like, or there's too much effort involved in pulling all of these different things together and making sense out of it. And those are kind of the things where we're saying, okay, now let's cross reference or whatever those sort of asks and needs with our AI capabilities, because I think AI is one of those areas in the world. It's like the analogy that I think about is like when the iPad first came out. And I feel
Mhm.
like Apple was very proud of this new thing. And like the majority of people were going, when am I going to ever need that thing? And then suddenly, I think it became this kind of deal where it's like, oh, you know what? Actually, there are several different reasons why I could use a thing that looks like a phone, only it's bigger. And so I think AI is sitting in that space as well. So there's a good mix, and I'm sure Caleb will have more to share on this as well. But I feel like there's a good mix between, having the the human intelligence, the people that are capable of building these things that have those kind of good ideas internally, and then mixing and matching that with here's what we're hearing from customers, and whether they're specifically asking for an AI solution or whether they're just simply saying, hey. I am losing a lot of stuff. External theft is a problem. What do I do? It's like, okay, now here's a potential place or here's a potential fit for this as part of a solution. So, Caleb, I'm sure you got thoughts as well.
Yeah, so Scott is very close to the customer prospect, right? The customer is coming to Zebra and saying, here's my challenge. How can you help me solve that? I guess the example I would give is from the opposite, from the standpoint of the Zebra community is thousands of customers. And every year we have a conference called the Zebra Zone Conference. And this allows all of our customers to attend this conference and hear how each other are utilizing these solutions. And it's so cool when you see a customer who may not have a particular solution, hear a presentation about how a medium or a large customer is leveraging AI, and immediately the lights turn on and they say, I never thought I could do that. And now I understand it's a reality. Who can I talk to help me on my journey? And of course, right, we have many support teams to help that customer on their journey. So the way my experience with it is a little bit from the opposite, where the customer is already a Zebra customer and wanting to expand their use cases, but they're very inquisitive in terms of knowing, hey, Zebra has more solutions. What can they do for me? Who can I talk to who is already using it, and how can they share some use cases with me so I can better understand it?
I love it. Yeah, it's super important to interact with the customer, right? That's like a golden rule, and constantly stay in front of them and learn from them. Um, I know you guys don't have a crystal ball, but what do you think the future looks like for AI and NLP? I mean, we could be talking in a month from now, things could change, but what do you think is coming?
Scott, why don't you jump into that one first?
Yeah, I think it's similarly to what we were kind of getting at before is like what are some of those gaps or what are those some of those problems that we're trying to solve, and is there a way that AI makes it better? And I think about it, hear a lot about people being worried, like, oh, AI is coming, which means that I'm going to be replaced, or there's going to be some big massive sea change, and it's going to lead to some change for my employment, or whatever I do is going to become completely different. I'm not sure that it's that specifically, right? I think when I see the ways that AI is seems to be most effectively integrated into different solutions, it's more about allowing, because a lot of people just already have less staff, right? Teams are
Right.
small, their scope of control is large. And we have talked and thought about technology in general as a force multiplier for a long time. AI is like, the turbocharger for that. It really does allow you to say, I can't and I do not have enough time in my week to sort through this enormous list of stores or whatever, to figure out where to travel or to figure out what to investigate or to figure out, how to go improve profitability this week. I really
Mhm.
need something to tell me where to go and what to do. Or at least if I'm going to go, look through a couple of things this week, which ones are the first three that I should be considering? So that's how I kind of think about it. And it's not necessarily one of the things that he mentioned earlier is like AI is starting to provide this sort of front end that is a lot more accessible, and like a user experience that is a lot more accessible. Like ChatGPT as an example is like I just literally ask it a question in plain English and it tells me something that is the results of some sort of complex computer process in the background, right? And so I think that's another thing that makes it maybe not as scary. Thinking about it is like there's a lot more sort of user-friendly ways to leverage the AI now. So just thinking from a future perspective, I know there is or seems to be a lot of maybe unsettledness about, hey, what does this mean for me? I don't want to be left behind and those kinds of things. And I think, there's definitely always um, a need and a value to, staying with the times, staying educated, understanding what's out there, and those listening to podcasts like the Loss Prevention Magazine podcast. But also, I don't think it's going to be as big and scary as we think. I think it's going to be a great efficiency driver. And I think it's only going to become easier to use and easier to implement.
Yeah, I mean, shoot, if anyone thinks about their job, and not just an LP, but any job, you sort of have this acceptable limit, right? If you say, okay, I can only get so much done in a day. What could I do
Sure.
if I had limitless time? And I think people are really, it's to me, that's where the acceleration is really going to happen. Is we're going to realize, hey, I could be using this AI tool for all these things that I've just said, hey, I don't have time for that. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think.
I use this analogy sometimes, and forgive me if it's a little on the clunky side, but like, it's fall time, just was fall time, it's about winter time, and you got all the leaves that fall in the yard, right? And you're raking. And you could be an amazing leaf raking person. You could be the best person in the whole entire world with a rake.
Mhm.
But you are, as you mentioned, you are going to hit an outside bounds of your capability. There's only so many leaves you're going to be able to rake in a day. And then
Right.
if I stroll in with a leaf blower and I could bundle all those things up in, a third of the time, a quarter of the time, then it's just about the fact that I had better technology available to me. It didn't mean that I was more skilled or less skilled or anything. It's just you were operating under the bounds of the technology you had, and then I was able to come in with something different. And so I think that's what it is let's all look for the leaf blowers, as they're being provided to us and say, how can we use these things to make us more effective and get more done?
Yeah, I love that analogy. That's not clunky at all. Caleb, what do you think?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question. So thinking about it from the technology side of things, we've seen an interesting shift from customer prospects, or just call it prospects in general, who connect with us at conferences like NRF and RELA. And the thing that has started to shift is customers are changing their terminology. So rather than saying, "Hey, what do you have in terms of an EBR solution?" Their terminology has shifted to be, "Do you have an EBR solution on steroids, and is it multi-model?" Right? And so the customer is starting to realize, I need something different. I may not know exactly what that different thing is or how to articulate it, but I'm going to at least try to describe it a little bit differently. Right? And so we've had a lot of prospects lately who are saying, okay, I, my team is fantastic about catching the loss, but we need to influence the other side of the shrink equation and improve the experience, improve the amount of merchandise that we do sell. Right? Because it's one thing to reduce shrink by 10%, but then also to have an equal sales loss of 10%. Right?
Right.
So they're
Not
realizing,
good.
okay, I need to influence the other side of the shrink equation. And so they're saying, hey, I need inventory analytics. I need RFID analytics. I need IoT analytics, right? They're starting to realize, okay, my loss prevention perspective is now going to grow. But more importantly, the data that feeds those decisions is going to go through the roof in terms of its complexity and its size, right? So we have a handful of customers right now that are over 20 terabytes of data.
Wow.
From a standalone EBR solution, that would be a nightmare to
Mhm.
crunch, right? Our solution, it's not, right? It's a cloud native solution that no longer has legacy technology like core counts, right? So it's wide open on Google BigQuery. So we don't care how big the customer's database is. We don't care how many data feeds they want to give us, or the diversity of the data. If it helps you solve your business problems, helps you grow your sales, helps you create an overall better experience, then we're winning in the loss prevention world, right? Because it's not just shrink reduction or preventing a unit loss.
Mhm.
So that's really where we're starting to see that change. And then customers really being open to the idea of, okay, it will probably be more than one solution, right? Whether that is self-checkout or empowering the frontline worker. It can no longer just be a single solution where we say, hey, run with it and hope for the best, right? Customers are realizing, hey, there's more solutions out there that can solve our problems. And a company like Zebra has a wide portfolio to help with that.
Yeah, I think we're headed more and more towards a wider integration with LP into the larger business. I mean, we always talk about total retail loss, but even back in my day, right, that was the goal, is to be a business partner, be integrated into the business. And what you're talking about is exactly that. It's making sure that anything that you put your money on is going to help the entire business, not just stop an item from walking out the door, right? It's going to help you sell more items. That kind of takes me to my next question is, do you think AI is really going to enhance things like KPIs, like risk scoring and modeling? What will be the effect? I think I know the answer, but want to hear your take on it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think. Oh, sorry, Caleb. Yeah,
Sorry.
I could take the first shot at it. Yeah, I think that I remember building some of these things manually on my own. Trying to
Yeah.
get going from department to department, trying to get all the data put together, trying to
Mhm.
crunch things myself, or trying to make whatever risk estimates or however we were going to track the different stats. And kind of building on that, the previous discussion, it really is about, to some degree, it's about controlling what you can control and what are the actual levers that I have to pull and how effective are those things. To some extent, the loss component, right, is affected maybe more by external factors to things that I can control than it
Mhm.
is by things that I can't control. Whether a cashier is effectively running the register and not making mistakes and knows what the policy is and knows how to get customers through the line quickly, I've got a little more control over that. And so and oh, by the way, they have the potential of causing a whole heck of a lot bigger profitability impact, the 100, 200 transactions or whatever they bring in a day, depending on your business, than, if one person comes in and engages in a theft incident, right? Obviously overgeneralizing to some degree, but they've got their hands in the process quite a bit more often. So I think that's one of the things when I think about what are the KPIs and how are we going, first of all, sort of just the data automation of being able to have all of those things flowing in together. You mentioned total retail loss, and I feel like total retail loss is in a way similar to the RFID conversations that we've all been having for a long time, which is like we've all known about it for a while. We've
Yeah.
all agreed that it's a very good idea. How do we do it? And
Right.
so it's the devil has been in the details of the implementation and the execution to those kinds of things. And I think the fact of having AI-based solutions and those kinds of things, and it also kind of ties back to the efficiency element, right? Because it's like I could have actually gotten my hands on all those different data sets and all those different stats that represent those different levers in the business. But again, it is a lot of information for a person to be able to chop through. And
Mhm.
so, and even a team of people sometimes. And so, yeah, the AI again, I think that is a force multiplication element for sure. But it allows you to then position yourself as, especially when I think about it from the loss prevention perspective, we have this sort of built-in advantage of having worked in the world of managing things by exception for a very long time. And
Mhm.
saying like, okay, here's what I see in the data, and this is what it means is happening in the real world, and here's how I respond to that. Sometimes unlike other parts of the business, which are kind of more static reporting and different things like that. And so I think when you then take these kind of great wins of being able to say, hey, there's a lot of information here, I can distill it down to the key points really fast, and I can get it out in the hands of the people that can actually go fix the problem or correct whatever's going on. That's a really attractive proposition, as you mentioned, across the whole business. And now again, you're adding value. You're not a cost center. I know I shouldn't have said it, but it's that old sort of, that a loss prevention is a cost. It's not, not so much, right? Caleb
Right.
mentioned it, but it's we could lose the same amount of stuff and sell more and our shrink goes down. Isn't that great? So like let's focus on all of those controllable things. I think AI does an incredible job of giving us a bigger influence over those kinds of things.
Absolutely. And Caleb, I know you started to say something too. So
Yeah, just to expand upon that a little bit, it's funny. KPIs is actually how Scott and I met. So so back in
This is
20,
you
20
bonded
accurate.
over
This
KPIs.
is true.
Scott and I
Yeah,
were
you're
both
getting a real
giving.
insight into the nerdiness of this friendship here.
Yeah, we were both giving presentations at NRF about how our organizations were using KPIs for shrink prediction modeling.
Mhm.
And it's interesting because we have quite a lot of customers who still do that, right? There is value in taking different data points to say, if these data points hit this threshold, it's an indication that bad things are going to be happening in my location. And those bad things could be, whatever you think it could be, right? Whether it's loss of sales, more units lost, poor customer experience, you name it. Now, the interesting thing is historically, right, to create those KPI data points, they were usually condition based, right? Whereas it was like, okay, I want a KPI where a cashier does a refund, over $500, or a store has a poor conversion rate at 80, 60%, right? It was always a threshold of criteria. And then
Mhm.
that criteria, because of system performance, tended to be siloed, right? The criteria could be customer conversion, total refunds for store, total profitability for store. And so retailers were sending out siloed or very purpose-built reports to their store locations. And once they started adding up all those reports, they're figuring out, I'm sending out over 100 KPIs. So which ones are actually important, right? Is it the 99th one, or is it going to be the 101 KPI that I create, right? And so now customers with our new application, they're saying, okay, I've got 100 total KPIs. There's two things I can do differently with it. The underlying condition that was shaping the KPI, that can all go away, right? With AI, there's no longer a need to have a condition rules-based set. More importantly, the data feeding that KPI, the bigger the data set, the better the AI result. The other side of it is, what if I take all 100 KPIs, drop it into a single report, and then have our application run over that entire data set and then highlights the specific stores or the specific customers or cashiers that are potentially of concern, right? And
Mhm.
so in our new application, we use something pretty cool. It's a patent pending feature called a deep learning autoencoder network, right? And it thrives on more data. More importantly, it is exclusive to the data that is presented to it live in the moment. So there's no
Okay.
pre-training, there's no training on other customers' data. It is 100% conscious of the data that you are submitting in that moment, and it's on demand, right? So for a company that has 100 KPIs, this is now identifying to them, hey, it's actually these 5 stores that are going to be your problems based on all of these KPIs. So it's taking work out of the front end, that front end manager from having to look at reports and saying like, oh, well, the reason why I was up in sales this day was because it was a tax-free day and that offset our refund, percentage. That all goes away. And so we're giving time back to the people who are running the store and having a meaningful impact with customers rather than looking at reports.
Hmm. So I guess pivot tables, no more.
No more. No more. Scott and I love pivot tables, but
Yeah.
no more for the frontline
Yeah,
worker.
I
No.
love them. Store managers are not super fond of them, I find.
No. It's you know what, you kind of don't want to leave it up to interpretation, right? Because everybody has their own take on things, they have their own
Totally.
biases, right? And if you
Mhm.
leave it up to that individual to interpret it, you're going to get differences across the business. So,
Yes.
speaking of that, like what are some of the like day-to-day practices that you see in place that are helping people to adopt AI, or what are some of the challenges that you're seeing?
Yeah, so one of the I would say early challenges, definitely in the last couple of years, pre-ChatGPT, is the organization was thinking, hey, I need AI. I see a couple other competitors who are using AI, but I guess if we're going to do it, we will have to hire some PhD level people to
Yeah.
help us understand.
Yep.
The next challenge that comes with that then is, okay, we've got the PhD data scientists who can create the AI. But now I need a business person who can bridge the gap between the rest of the organization and feed the use case back to the technical team and then back and forth as we're trying to massage that data model,
Mhm.
right? And so it was a very long, drawn out process that was expensive to implement. It's never cheap to hire PhD individuals. And more importantly, right? If you don't have a person who has the business expertise, you might be stuck. And if that person suddenly goes away, retires, then you may be stuck again. So the cool thing about it in 2025, especially with Zebra, is our AI solutions are purpose built and accessible really to anyone who has that solution, right? Whether it's a self checkout or a handheld device or actionable intelligence, right? And so we've accelerated that onboarding process because the AI is built into our application natively. So you don't need a data science person on your side. You don't need a PhD. And more importantly, we tailored it so you really don't need to Google terminology either, right? So it's more about you present the data set live in the screen, submit it to anomaly detection, and live in the moment, we give you what is anomalous. But then we took it a step further and said, it's one thing to tell you or to trigger AI and show you something anomalous, but you may still have questions, right? You may be wondering, well, why is it an anomaly? Or how do I figure out why this is an anomaly and that's not? So we took it a step further and we implemented what's called a reasoning engine. And so we will tell you in sentence form why it's anomalous. So you no longer have to wonder or go Google terminology or speculate, right? We're just tell you outright, here's why it's anomalous based on the data that you submitted. So we've truly accelerated that initial idea or light bulb moment where the customer says, okay, I need to start getting a little more advanced, to then giving them a solution where on day one, they can trigger it and understand the output without any additional expertise.
Man, I can tell you that is huge. There's been a lot of different retailers that I have worked at and talked to in my past where the data analysts that sat in the corporate office, maybe it was one, maybe it was two, held kind of like the keys to the kingdom when it came to the data. And if something happened to them, they hurt. They felt that pain when they left. So I love that you guys have a solution that's talking in plain language that, let's say somebody brand new came in, could probably pick it up and be able to function with it. I think that's huge. And I'm sure a lot of retailers would have a few less nightmares
Yes,
due to
absolutely.
that. So let's talk a little bit about the Zebra Workcloud Actionable Intelligence platform. I've heard it's pretty state of the art. It leverages AI for LP, which is all what this whole conversation is about. Talk a little bit about that and some other solutions within Zebra, if you can, in our last few minutes here.
Yes. So I'll take the first part of the question. Scott, if you want to take the second part.
Sure.
Okay.
So Workcloud Actionable Intelligence is our newest product offering. We call it version 7. And it's been built from the ground up to be what we call a cloud native, right? So it is no longer the legacy terminology of, hey, you're going to be placed on the server and it has, 6 or 8 cores running your database, right? That all goes away. It's a serverless setup. So that way we can provide unbelievable amount of compute to process whatever you need to solve your most challenging business problem, right? Whether that's point of sale data or point of sale plus inventory plus RFID and the mix of all of it combined, our application is designed to do that and provide those results in seconds, right? You're no longer waiting minutes or hours, right? We have a classic example internally where we run a query of 180 gigabytes, right? And it comes back in seconds. The only way to do that is on a serverless design like this. Because of that power and the ability to bring in, right, any data that you desire to solve your problems, we then built in AI to help facilitate your next steps, right? So our deep learning autoencoder neural network, it is patent pending, right? But it is designed to say, hey, we don't care where your data comes from or what data you need to solve your problem. We want you to run AI regardless of what that data is and run it on demand live in the moment, right? So you create the data live in the screen, or you bring in existing data set, and then you can trigger AI right there in the moment, and a few seconds later, you'll get the results. We then tell you why it's anomalous, right? So you're going to get a written explanation as to why this thing is anomalous and why it should be a concern for you. So truly reducing the amount of time you may use to investigate or discover a problem, we're greatly accelerating that journey. And then we round it out with a functionality called what we call descriptive analytics, right? And the industry previously had a keyword of prescriptive analytics, where we're telling an end user how to solve various solutions. But but we really started to say, okay, if we're bringing in any data set, regardless of where it comes from, now we need to get into the field of descriptive analytics. So with a single click, you can start to realize the relationship of various data points and the correlation of various data points, right? You as a loss prevention expert may say, yes, I am an expert in point of sale transactions, but I'm not an expert in RFID. So how does that data correlates with my point of sale data? Well, now, right, just in a single click, we can tell you how it correlates. So we're accelerating that journey of data discovery and getting you to a point of actionable intelligence much more quickly.
Wow, that's amazing. That's like, I'm gonna have to see some demos offline.
Let
Scott,
me know. I'm a pro.
yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah. So what I would add is I can kind of take the other Zebra solutions that I think are kind of adjacent or also involved in the loss prevention space. So, and Caleb teased a couple of these earlier in the discussion, but one of the coolest ones that I've seen is it's our MP7200, like a bed scanner that can be installed at a self checkout or even at a man checkout lane. But essentially, it's a bed scanner that has a built-in camera that has a computer vision model that's constantly working in that scanner. And so it does a handful of different things all built into the one device. One of them being like just a produce recognition. So thinking about a grocery situation or where they're selling those different sort of non-skewed products, and there might be 30 different kinds of organic apples or whatever. You kind of set it on the scanner, and instead of then you having to figure it out, or I can't remember what the PLU is or whatever, it's going to give you like the three options. It's going to say it's probably one of these, right? And it's going to immediately make the transaction that much more efficient. So from a throughput and customer efficiency and satisfaction standpoint, that's one of the big selling points. But also from the kind of more pure loss prevention standpoint, when you think of things like a scan avoidance, meaning, hey, the camera saw something go by, but we didn't get a scan of that, or ticket switching. So that's weird. It was a enormous ribeye steak, and yet they had a Kool-Aid packet in their hand when they scanned it, and they hit the 99-cent Kool-Aid packet instead of the steak. Those kinds of things now are going to be identified in the moment by that scanner and be able to say, hey, what I saw did not match with what scanned. And then now it gives you a couple of things. One, it gives you the ability to intervene in the moment. So I can now alert that self-checkout attendant to go fix the whatever, let's call it a mistake. And then also now you're adding that rich data about what happened in that transaction into your point of sale data. So then when you go back to see, well, how come there's all this Kool-Aid that keeps getting sold with a barcode mismatch when Steve works the self-checkout? And those kinds of things I think are really great, being able to kind of meld the traditional sort of data set of just kind of watching stuff pass across the register with kind of the computer vision. That I think is one really, really powerful solution. There are a couple of others that I think are really neat, and they're more just kind of adjacent to loss prevention. One of our kind of most tried and true AI solutions is our demand intelligence solution. So think about like inventory forecasting and planning, life cycle pricing for products that go through seasonality and things like that. Really being able to say, again, like the pivot table, while good, could be better, could be more efficient. We could let the machine make the forecast, and when we test this thing out, it's almost always like leaps and bounds ahead of whatever forecasting methodology our customers were doing previously. And so I think the loss prevention adjacency there is, it's a garbage in, garbage out type of situation when we talk about inventory accuracy. And so if we're not forecasting appropriately, we're not getting the right product in the right location, and then that leads to either upset customers or transferring product all over the place, which can be a mess, and all those kinds of things. And then sort of when you then go downstream and you're like, well, is this damaged, or is it shrink, or was it stolen, or did we just never have it in the first place? I think having that AI solution on the front end to be ensuring that, hey, we are generating the right inventory movements at the front end of the process, I think can be really powerful. And then the last one that I think is really neat, and I think will only continue to become more relevant, is when Caleb was mentioning, hey, I'm an associate, I'm ringing the register, the customer is giving me a bunch of grief about this non-receipted return they're trying to do. Why don't I just ask my device? And my device has ingested all of my policies and procedures, and it knows whether or not I'm allowed to ring a non-receipted return. So let me just ask it, and maybe it even says it out loud. No, you're not allowed to ring a non-receipted return. Oh, well, you heard him, Mr. Customer. I just asked and I'm not allowed to do it. So I apologize. But, but it's those things, from the, I guess the more sort of cynical point of view, right? It cuts out a lot of the I didn't know, or I thought I was allowed to do it, or those kinds of things, because we're literally going to put all the answers in your hand and all you have to do is ask it a question. But just, again, in the spirit of broadening the scope of loss prevention out to being a business partner, the ability to, increase customer satisfaction, find what they need, find it fast, get them in and out the door. It just sort of goes back to like all of the surveying and things like that is basically like people still do want to go to brick and mortar stores. They want to experience, they want to try things on, but it is more about the actual experience of the shopping trip. It's not as purely transactional as it used to be. And so I feel like those kinds of AI solutions that allows the associate to focus on creating that experience, I think they're only going to get better, and I'm pretty impressed and pretty excited about what Zebra's got coming there.
Absolutely. Well, I'm impressed. And I think what's going to have to happen is in 6 months, we'll have to get back, maybe even in 2 months, because it is moving so quickly. And it sounds like you guys are just exponentially growing with these applications, right? So let's plan on getting back together again, talking about AI again. But I really enjoyed this conversation. You guys are fantastic. Love Zebra. Love everything you're doing over there. And thank you everybody for listening today. And Caleb and Scott, you guys have a great holiday if I don't talk to you.
Thank you. You as well. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.